Why is it that every traditional publisher seems to hate thick, epic fantasies nowadays? And on that same note, why do they seem to flee from original ideas, especially in the fantasy genre? I think it's time for us all to admit the truth. Traditional publishing is broken. It's slow, it's formulaic, it plays it safe, and if you're a fantasy lover like myself, you've likely felt the void in this beloved genre. And that's just it, isn't it? Traditional publishing doesn't just hurt authors. They impact the everyday peasant readers like you and me. And that's why today we're going to be spilling the tea on everything that's wrong with traditional publishing. And why indie fantasy has an opportunity to absolutely take over the market. Now we have to start with a very important question. How did we get here? Fantasy has been a part of human culture since the beginning of time. Neanderthals probably told stories around the campfire in a series of grunts and snorts. But even as far back as 800 BCE, Homer gave us the Odyssey. Around the 11th century, we start to get myths forming around the kings of Britain, most notably King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. If we fast forward to the 1800s, we start to get a collection of different myths and legends in the form of short stories by the Brothers Grimm. And in the early 1900s, we get the birth of high fantasy with the introduction of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Now, the work of J.R.R. Tolkien is largely credited with the acceptance of fantasy in the mainstream of adult entertainment. And he really did pave the way for authors like C.S. Lewis and Robert Jordan to add their own hallmarks to the genre. And without them, we might never have gotten a Game of Thrones or a Stormlight Archive. Now, I want you to ask yourselves, what would have happened if these authors simply decided to produce literature that was acceptable to the public at the time? What if greed was the main motivator of these great works rather than passion? What kind of a world would we live in without Frodo and Sam? Or without magical portals hiding inside of a wardrobe? Authors that were willing to push the boundaries of what was acceptable for their time were the ones who changed the course of history and cemented themselves as modern legends. And that leads us to the first thing that I hate about traditional publishing. Now, when I say there's a lack of creativity, I don't necessarily mean from the ideation perspective. Fantasy is literally an unlimited genre where authors can invent new species, craft new worlds, establish alternative timelines, or conjure up unique magic systems. Fantasy authors are really only bound by the constraints that they set for themselves. But the point that I'm going to hit on a lot today is the fact that traditional publishing, at its core, is a business. They want books that will sell well so that they can make a profit. Now, if you want an example of how that creates a problem, look no further than modern day Hollywood. Comic books were not considered cool when I was growing up. It was very much a nerdy activity to be reading a picture book as an adult. Now, this started to change a little bit when we got movies like the X-Men and Spider-Man, which were widely successful at the box office. And this ultimately paved the way for one of the greatest feats of storytelling on the screen with the Marvel Universe. We were blessed with creative adaptations from directors and writers that were actually passionate about these comics that they were creating. But somewhere along the way, things stopped feeling authentic. Everything became a money grab. Writing and storytelling just didn't matter anymore. They had crafted a formula that proved its worth at the box office. So what more did they need? Who cares if it wasn't original? Who cares if it was the same story over and over and over again? They were making money. You want to know what didn't make a lot of money at the box office? Shawshank Redemption, Fight Club, Blade Runner. What about The Iron Giant, Treasure Planet, The Thing? Today, many of those same films are considered classics and are an iconic part of entertainment culture. Now, Brandon Sanderson said in one of his recent lectures, and I'm kind of summarizing this, but essentially he said that if you write something generic, it might sell, but you won't necessarily have a loyal fan base. It's really only when we take risks and write what we're passionate about that you start to get that emotional reaction out of people. So, if nobody hates your book, you might be doing something wrong. But that's the problem. Traditional publishers don't want readers to hate the books they're publishing. They don't want those books to bomb. They don't want to wait 20 years to see a return on their investment. They want a neat, predictable 3-act structure. They want the inciting incident, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution to all be in their perfect little proper places. They want vampires, but only if vampires are trending right now. They want hard magic systems, so long as it's popular right now. Traditional publishing chases junk food, and it rarely gives us the feast that we're all craving. They look at the analytics, they look at the trends, and those are the books they publish. These entities cannot afford to take risks. And when they do, they don't bother promoting you. They simply can't afford for their books not to sell. Now, I know I'm going to get some people that are going to argue with me saying traditional publishers take risks all the time. On any debut author, it's going to be a risk. After all, they lose money on a lot of debut authors. That's true. Many publishers rely on a few highly successful authors to subsidize all of their new debut authors that they're trying to pull in. But the authors they sign are usually following the formula that is dictated by the publisher. And one of those formula criteria is... Now, I posted something a couple weeks ago on my channel asking you guys some things that you hate about traditional publishing. Here's something that Vesnerach said. Word counts are super frustrating. A literary agent won't even look at your query if they see your book is over 120,000 words. It disregards the merit of the actual story, which is what I feel like they should be basing their judgment on. It's like they view it as an amateurish to have a big book. So, if you're an aspiring author, I just need you to know, you will not get past any literary agents if you list your word count as above 120,000 words. So are you drafting an epic fantasy with incredible world building? Scrap it. Developing a complex magic system? Forget about it. Dumb it down, skip over character development, and give us the same generic plot. We want to be able to predict exactly what's happening based off of the percentage on the Kindle Unlimited bar, since that's what fantasy readers really want, right? I cannot say this enough. You have to understand that traditional publishing is a business. It all boils down to the fact that the more words your book has, the more pages it's going to be, and the more money it's going to cost to print. And ultimately, that's all they really care about. Until you prove yourself as an author or have some pretty serious connections, they just won't take that kind of financial risk. So with that in mind, I just want to point out a few debut fantasy novels you may have heard of. Elantris? What about Red Rising? The Blade itself? How about Name of the Wind? What about Malice? Okay, Lies of Loch Lamora. The Way of Shadows. Gardens of the Moon. I think you get the point. I'm sick and tired of gatekeepers and publishers putting restrictions on authors. How many John Gwynns or Joe Abercrombies have we lost because of a stupid word count requirement? Did we not learn anything from school and the meaninglessness of word counts? Like, publish the book exclusively as an ebook if you absolutely refuse to print more paper, for crying out loud. There's got to be a better solution than simply rejecting all big books. Alan Jones says, I've heard from a bunch of other authors that trad doesn't really do a good job promoting authors. Like, they make the authors still do all their own promotions and stuff. Isn't that supposed to be one of the perks of trad? But they only focus on the big names. Oh my goodness, did you just sign with one of the big publishing houses? Congratulations! Now go market your own book. What? You go through all the effort of writing an incredible story, and instead of focusing on giving us the next installment, you have to go onto social media, build a following, and market your own books? Sure, they'll do some basic marketing for you, like putting your book on their website, maybe do a post or two on social media, maybe schedule a book signing or something. But unless you're a big name brand, they just don't care about you. If traditional publishing is a business, and it is, then the marketing is all about ROI. If a publisher spends $100 in advertising, they expect to get $150 in sales. That's just how it works. And if they're spending money and not seeing an ROI, do you really think they'll continue to market your book? So that leaves you to do all the heavy lifting yourself, which is what you're going to have to do as an indie author anyway, so at least you'd have a little more freedom and clear expectations. This is sadly just a new reality in today's day and age. If you were expecting a traditional publisher to do all the promotion, they will. They'll probably give you a generic promotion plan that they give to every other writer. They'll probably send out a few art copies to their connections and get a few blurbs for your book, but you just can't expect them to go above and beyond for you. You don't matter to them. Until you start making them money, chances are they're probably not even going to pay attention to you. Pink Mockingjay says something that he hates is, how agents might ask you to tweak in a few characteristics or change a character in a way they see fit for marketing. And that's even worse.
Hey, really great job on that story, but we kind of need to market your book, so do you mind adding in a bunch of spice? That's really trending right now. Or can you just make the characters just a little bit more morally gray? That's big now too.
Now, I understand making a few changes to make the story a little bit better to enhance the narrative that's being portrayed, but to simply make it so that it will sell more copies? I don't know that I like that. Allow me to illustrate the damage of slow entertainment releases. Stranger Things had 14 million viewers within about a month of its release. It was a cultural phenomenon that took over the media. So how come nobody is really talking about it anymore? Maybe it has something to do with the 3-year wait before seasons 3 and 4. Maybe it's because all of the kids became adults before you could finish the show. I don't know. I'll probably still watch the final season, but that same excitement just isn't there anymore. Or another popular one, what about Invincible? They gave us an incredible animated show with a fresh take on superheroes, and then waited 2 years to give us the next season. And when they did give it to us, they only gave us half, and then made us wait another 6 months to watch the other half of the season. It's so frustrating that it really just taints the enjoyment experience. I've gotten to the point where if a show makes me watch it 1 episode at a time, I'll just wait for it to be completely done before I start watching it. That same feeling I get when I'm loving a popular show, only to realize it's been canceled or delayed, is how I feel about many traditionally published books. Authors either rush to get their books done to meet their publishers' deadlines, which, let's face it, kind of has a noticeable impact on the quality of the product, or worse, they put so much pressure on the author that they get writer's block and we never see another book from them again. Now, indie authors, on the other hand, are in the driver's seat. They have full control over what they want to write, when they want to write it, and how they plan to release it. I think that this is an important consideration for authors, especially in an era of binge consumption culture. I might honestly hate this one the absolute most. Traditional publishers have all these gatekeepers in place for aspiring authors. You have to find a literary agent. Good luck. And if you somehow manage to do that, then you have to sell it to a publishing house. Sounds easy enough. So let's just talk about some statistics. Between 95 and 99% of manuscripts submitted to editors are too poorly written, have a bad or unoriginal premise, or are irrelevant. These will get an instant pass or ghost. Oof. Okay. What else have we got? From the remaining 5% of high-quality manuscripts left for consideration, most are still rejected due to timing, similar books on their list, or the state of the market. Nice. The popular industry statistic is that between 1 and 2% of manuscripts that a publisher receives is published. In other words, they accept 1 or 2 of every 100 manuscripts they receive. So traditional publishers have all these safeguards in place. And if you make it through, like I mentioned earlier, they still don't really market your book that much. With all these barriers in place, it's no wonder so many aspiring authors are turning to indie alternatives. You'll have to do a bunch of the marketing anyway, so why not bet on yourself? So that you can write a story that you care about, so that you can promote a story you put your heart and soul into. And can anyone guess what happens? It starts to gain some traction. People start to notice you. Your book starts flying off the proverbial shelves. You've done it. You are now a successful indie author. All of that hard work has finally paid off.
Hey, you know what? We'll take that little story off your hands. It was cute and all, that little run you had there. But the show's over, pal. Just give us the rights and we'll take good care of you.
Listen, I'm happy for you authors. Get your bag. I support that. It's the dream of so many aspiring authors. I just hate that these people were probably rejected by this traditional industry. And after the author does all of the work, traditional publishers just get to swoop in and take all the credit, take all the revenue. It makes me sick. Those lazy, judgmental, pretentious turning up their noses at you until they get a whiff of the almighty dollar. Then boy, oh boy, do they come running. They want a cut of all that revenue. They are vultures, and I will always hate that about them. I think there's a big difference between writing something that you're passionate about and writing something that will sell, according to trad publishers. Even Brandon Sanderson admits that your story should be 75% creative and 25% sellable, or something like that. I don't know the exact quote, but it was in his recent lectures. He says that you always have to keep the business side of things in your mind if you want to make writing your full-time career. And I hate to admit it, but I agree. And that brings me just to the final thing that I hate about trad publishing. It's all about money. How much are you willing to dismantle your story for the sake of sales? Are you willing to conform in order to become an author that will, grab a little bit of cash? Or are you someone that wants to leave behind a literary legacy, regardless of what people think about your work? When I read these indie books, there's just an undeniable passion about them that just comes through all of the pages. These are the people that simply just want to tell stories. Of course, it's perfectly natural for authors to want to write as their career, but you get a sense that they'll still be writing regardless of the financial outcome. The Sword of Kaigen. This book absolutely spat in the face of traditional plot structure. M.L. Wang put the climax smack dab in the middle of the story.
Who in their right mind would do that? There's no way that would work. No one's gonna buy that.
And yet it did. Kings of Paradise ended this book on a cliffhanger instead of a neat little standalone with series potential nonsense. And you know what that did? It made me want to read the next book. I like the fact that Richard wants you to keep reading his series and that he doesn't want you to be satisfied after one book. The Oathsworn Legacy.
Short story formats will never work in the context of a larger plot.
Well, KR threw his own unique style and passion into this story that just made it so much fun to read. But would a traditional publisher have allowed it? I doubt it. The Lost War. Any literary agent will tell you that head hopping just doesn't work in modern fantasy. That's funny. Then why did they decide to steal this little gem away from us? There's just something about working to obtain something that makes the journey so much more valuable. Now, this is probably going to be a bad analogy, but I'm going to give it anyway. It's a UFC example, so if you don't like sports, you can skip ahead this part. When Conor McGregor was up and coming, he was unstoppable. He would fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. The man had no fear because he had nothing to lose. And then he became a champion in not one, but two divisions. He fought Floyd Mayweather in boxing, a completely different sport, and earned millions of dollars. And you could kind of see that drive that he once had to prove himself kind of fizzle away. After all, why get beat up when he already had all the money he'd ever need? Why go back to the octagon when you have a reputation to protect? I think that there are a lot of people in the world that simply don't know what to do with themselves when they actually achieve those lofty goals that they set for themselves. There's that sense of, well, now what? If something goes from being your side hustle, your passion, to being your full-time job, will you get the same joy and satisfaction out of your work? Or will it start to feel like a 9-to-5, an obligation, like an assignment you need to complete, rather than a passion project you get to perfect? I don't know the answer to that one. And I do think there's quite a bit of nuance to this specific category. I know there's traditional authors like Brandon Sanderson who clearly it's his passion, yet he's traditional published and he loves what he does. But I just feel like there are others who have written a great story that just, once they get that fame, once they get that money, we just get unfinished series. So I understand that there's nuance. This one could go either way. I'm putting it in this category though, and you can debate it with me in the comments. You might even be right. I just had to throw it in there. So there you have it. All the reasons traditional publishing drives me absolutely crazy, and why indie publishing is such an amazing alternative for both authors and readers. If you're tired of waiting years to get a sequel, or seeing the same cookie cutter story over and over again, indie fantasy is where the real magic is happening, where real potential lies. So, did I miss anything? What do you hate about traditional publishing? Let me know in the comments, or let me know how I'm wrong. Maybe you love traditional publishing. I'm just happy you made it this far. And since you're already here, be sure to join the Indie Fantasy Club. Let's build this community of indie authors and fantasy readers to really push this genre to its full potential. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.